Welcome to the Ghost in the Shell podcast. This week, I want to kind of make like an audiobook styled podcast. So I kind of scripted out everything that I've looking forward to talking to you about, and I just want to do it in an audiobook style. So think of it as a sit down read at the library. This week's episode, we're talking about what understanding the sacrifices you make can do to make better use of your time. So these are pretty much thoughts and ideas that I would go back and tell myself at age 18 or 15. So the first question I want to ask you is that keep in mind, what do you think value is, or what do you believe that value is? Like, what's value mean to you? Like, I hear this a lot in the entrepreneurial um, I guess, entrepreneurial market, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of the decisions that are made from an entrepreneurial mindset is based off of value. What kind of value you're going to provide? Like if you make YouTube videos, right? Will you provide value for your customer, or will you provide value for your audience? Like, what is it? What does value mean to you? And so I went to go look at Google. And the definition of value is the regard that something is held to deserve the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. So that's the first definition. Now, the second one is the one that I really want to focus on. It's principles or standards of behavior that one's judgment of what is important in life. Principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. I like that. I like that definition. So here is the question that I'd really like to focus around. If we observe value from a position of health, then what do we do, right? If we observe value from a position of health, then we what? You could almost go on to say that we make weighted decisions based off wisdom, or in other words, personal data that we've collected. And so by using the virtue of accountability, we can practice not making the same mistake or mistakes over and over again, right? So it's like saying, I don't want to live this same hell that I lived previously because I know what the result produces. But if I fix the mistake, or hold myself accountable and fix whatever it is, the decision that I made previous, then I can move on to my next, I guess you would say, level or place or blah, blah, blah. So by collecting baby steps or taking small wins and accumulating them on macro and micro levels, you can think of this like running a small scaled government. Does that make sense? Like, I hear this a lot too. This is where we say, think about your small wins, right? Don't think about all your big wins, because the big ones are pretty much the result of you gathering all the small wins, and they eventually accumulate and make the huge one. So by collecting baby steps or taking your small wins and accumulating them on macro and micro levels, you can think of this like running a small scaled government. It's like you roam this earth pretty much like a government, a small scaled one, but it can grow, right? If let's say, for instance, think about it like somebody that does make YouTube videos. They are almost in a small scale running a government, because they have an audience, right? Once they build their channel up to like 1 point something million, now they're supplying the demand is value, and they have an audience to please, and they have standards to hold themselves accountable to, and so on. If they want to grow, if they want to scale, and so yeah. Anyways, so here's an example. Let's say that you set a goal to eat healthier this whole year, right? Let's not think about being the YouTube star or whatever. Now let's think about it on a personal level. So if you set a goal to eat healthier this whole year, let's say, for instance, that week 1 is full of ups and downs and mistakes were made, right? You probably ate 20, 80, 20% good, 80% not so good, right? Let's say that's for week 1. Now, week 2, let's say that it got a little bit better. You could almost say that it was a 50-50 week. You ate 50% great and 50% not so great on the second week. Now, week 3 comes along and it's a champion week. You met your micro standards, and at this point, you may start to think like, hey, I got this shoe. I got it, right? You might start to get to that very highly confident place, and you're like, I think, I could do this. So week 4 starts, and a small roadblock may appear because, hey, life happens. Life happens. And it may have been an 80-20 week, but what? It's still a victory. So week 1 might have been a 20-80. Week 2 might have been a 50-50. Week 3 was 100 out of 100. And week 4, 80-20. Now, if you were to write down on a graph your results for a 4-week period, it would kind of look like what? Think of the stock market, right? The little graph goes up, down, up, bearish, bullish, and then down a little bit, and so on, right? So what we're getting at with value decisions is, now, if we talk about hereditarily, personally, I know that in my bloodline, from the data collected, right? I know that in my bloodline there is diabetes, there's high blood pressure, there's heart issues, there's cancer, and you kind of get what I'm getting at. So to combat the future, if I want to end those curses, I need to what? I would need to strategize now, think differently now, so that my kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids, like pretty much generations forward, so they can take into consideration the weighted thoughts and concerns that I have now a bit more serious later on, right? So kind of get where I'm going at with this, like meaning things like health issues will always be there. But if I live life countering those issues right now, then my value system can be passed on to the next person and then improved, right? This is not rocket science. This is like saying that my mindset can be like a coat for my children, and I can pass it on to them by building this mindset and building these characteristics and these behaviors and keeping them consistent and growing them, right? And helping me govern my little small government by holding my standards to an extent, above average, or however you want to think about it. So let's take into consideration, let's think of it like this. Why principles? I say principles because if we think about it, like the United States alone has 2,804 satellites, or quote unquote eyes in the sky. But why? What do they have them for, right? What do they have satellites for? If we think of principles like a satellite, to help us govern not only ourselves or our nation, but what to monitor potential threats, to observe changes in other governments, and to pass signals for our devices, etc., etc. What I'm saying is that principles are what help you govern your behavior. So if you think about how the United States has 2,804 satellites, it what helps us govern our allies. It helps us have eyes on what other governments are doing, right? So if you hold your principles or think of your principles like satellites, you can use them like having eyes in the skies to help you govern yourself, not like a nation, but like a small government, or I'm just kind of using it as a metaphor, but to help you monitor your behavior, right? Help you monitor your psychological side. So now on a smaller scale, if you think of principles like a satellite or like multiple satellites, they are like the automated system that help you hold yourself and others accountable. The principles are like daily reminders. You wake up, and when you've committed yourself to do better, those principles such as eating healthier, exercising, going to work, being sophisticated, etc., etc., they are not the motivators, but they are the inspiration to your successes, right? So they are like the beacons to living a quality life. So what does this have to do with understanding the sacrifices you make in order to succeed? See, if I was to tell my younger self why I find it important now, it is because getting ahead is not about being competitive. It's not about killing animals and going to sacrifice to a god. It's more of, if I skip the party this one weekend or multiple weekends and work on my business, then I will have took my financial successes two more steps forward, as opposed to not working on my business and gaining no ground whatsoever. So think about it. If I don't show up to the gym, sure, I can lose weight by eating perfect. But if there is no weight lifted, then the strength doesn't show up and the level of pressure isn't taken to another level. Kind of makes sense? So, by understanding my sacrifice, whether it's time, energy, or a risky decision to invest into someone or something, then I get a return. I get a return in wisdom, in knowledge, or understanding to make the wiser choice down the road.